I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Chuka said, his voice trembling, but I am begging you to give me another chance. I will fight for you, Neka. I will fight for us. Neka listened in silence, her emotion a whirlwind. She wanted to believe him, but the scars of betrayal was still fresh. I need time, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Later that evening, as Nneka was helping her aunt close the shop, a group of women approached, whispering loudly. Isn't she the one from Lagos? One of them said. The one who destroyed a marriage? Nneka's blood ran cold. The rumors had followed her to the village. As the women continued to whisper and stare, Nneka realized that Adora wasn't done with her yet. Chuka sat in his office, reviewing documents, but his mind was elsewhere. Thoughts of Nneka consumed him. Despite his attempts to reach her, she remained silent, and her absence weighed heavily on him. A knock on the door broke his train of thoughts. He looked up to see Ifoma standing there, her presence as confident as ever. Ifoma, Chuka said, his voice flat. What are you doing here? I came to talk, she replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to figure things out for our child. Chuka frowned, leaning back in his chair. I've told you before, Ifoma, I will take responsibility for the child. But that's it. There is nothing between us anymore. Ifoma smirked, closing the door behind her. You say that, but deep down I know you still care about me. We had something real, Chuka, and we can have it again. Think about it. Raising our child together, building a family. There is no future for us, Ifoma, Chuka said firmly. I have moved on. Ifoma's eyes darkened. Moved on? To Neka, I presume. The same woman who abandoned you and ran off to God knows where. That's none of your business. Chuka snapped. This conversation is over. But Ifoma wasn't ready to give up. She planted herself in front of his desk, her voice softening. Chuka, I know I made mistakes, but so did you. Let's stop punishing each other and think about what's best for our child. You don't want to raise your son or daughter in a broken home, do you? Chuka's jaw tightened. Ifoma's words struck a nerve, but he refused to be manipulated. Later that evening, Chuka sat in his penthouse, a glass of whiskey in hand. Ifoma's visit had left him conflicted. He thought about Nneka, her kindness, her strength, and the way she made him feel like a better man. He realized that he had spent so much time letting others dictate his life. Ifoma, Adora, even his family, they all tried to control him, but with Nneka he felt free. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Adora. I heard Ifoma came to see you today. I hope you're not falling for her lies again. Call me. Chuka ignored the message, tossing his phone aside. Adora's influence over his life had gone on long enough. Meanwhile, Adora sat in her lavish apartment, sipping wine and scrolling through photos on her phone. She had heard about Ifoma's attempt to rekindle things with Chuka, and it infuriated her. That girl has no shame, Adora muttered, tossing her phone onto the couch. She dialed Ifoma's number. When Ifoma answered, Adora didn't bother with pleasantries. What do you think you're doing? Adora demanded. I am doing what's best for my child, Ifoma replied coolly. Unlike you, Adora, I have a legitimate claim to Chuka. Adora laughed bitterly. You think he would choose you because of a child? Chuka doesn't love you, Ifoma. He never did. And as for Nneka, she's as good as gone. I'll make sure of that. Do whatever you want, Adora, Ifoma said, but don't underestimate me. The call ended. leaving Adora more determined than ever to keep both Ifoma and Nneka out of Chuka's life. The next morning, Chuka made a decision. He couldn't let Adora or Ifoma control his future. He needed to find Nneka and win her back, no matter what it took. He called his assistant Tunde. "Book me a flight to Anambra," he said. Tunde resisted. "Sir, are you sure? Things are pretty tense with the board right now. They're expecting you to finalize the merger." "I don't care about the board," Chuka said. "This is more important." Tunde nodded, sensing the urgency in his boss's voice. As Chuka prepared for his trip, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't know if Nneka would forgive him, but he had to try. Back in Lagos, Ifoma and Adora continued their quiet battle for control. While Adora plotted to discredit Nneka further, Ifoma focused on gaining Chuka's trust. "You're wasting your time," Adora told Ifoma during a tense encounter at a charity event. "Chuka doesn't want you, and when I am done, he won't want Nneka either." "And you think he will want you?" Ifoma retorted. "You're delusional, Adora. Chuka is moving on, and neither of us can stop him." Adora's eyes flashed with anger. "We will see about that." In the village, Nneka was slowly finding her footing. She spent her days helping her aunt and reconnecting with childhood friends. But at night, when she was alone, her thoughts drifted to Chuka. She missed him, but she couldn't forget the pain his word had caused her. Even if he came back, could she still trust him again? Unknown to her, Chuka was on his way, determined to prove that his future lay with her and no one else. Nneka was finally beginning to feel like herself again. Her days in the village were filled with simple routines, helping her aunt with his shop, attending evening church services, and catching up with old friends. It wasn't the fast-paced life of Lagos, but it was peaceful. One afternoon, as she swept the compound, she heard the faint sound of a car approaching. It was unusual for someone in the village to drive such a flashy vehicle. Nneka frowned, shielding her eyes as a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in front of her aunt's house. The door opened, and out stepped Adora, her polished appearance slightly out of place in the rural setting. "What are you doing here?" Nneka asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Adora smiled coolly, closing the car door behind her with a deliberate air of superiority. "I came to talk, Nneka. You and I have unfinished business." Nneka led Adora into the sitting room, where her aunt gave the visitor a suspicious glance before excusing herself. The tension in the air was thick as Nneka sat across from Adora, folding her arms. "Say what you came to say and leave," Nneka said coldly. Adora chuckled. "You've always been direct? Fine, I'll get to the point. Do you know who your father really is, Nneka?" Nneka stiffened. "What kind of question is that? My father is dead, and that's all you need to know." Adora leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "That's what you think? That's what you think. But what if I told you your father wasn't the man you grew up believing he was? What if I told you he had a dark secret, one that could destroy your precious reputation if it ever got out?" Nneka's heart pounded in her chest. "You're lying. You're just here to stir up trouble." Adora smirked. "Am I? Ask around. Your father had another family, Nneka. A wife and children he abandoned before he met your mother. That's why your family struggled so much. He wasn't the hero you've painted in your mind. He was a fraud." Nneka's hands trembled. Her father had always been her source of pride and inspiration. Could Adora's words be true? You will say anything to hurt me, Nneka said, her voice shaking. But I won't believe you without proof. Adora pulled a manila envelope from her designer bag and slid it across the table. I thought you might say that. Inside, you will find letters and pictures, proof of your father's betrayal. Nneka insisted, staring at the envelope as if it were a snake ready to bite. Slowly, she picked it up and opened it. Inside were old photographs of a man who looked strikingly like her father, standing beside a woman and two young children. There were also handwritten letters, some addressed to the woman, others to the children, all signed with the father's name. Nneka's world seemed to crumble around her. The father she had idolized, the man whose memory she cherished, had lived a lie. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at Adora. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you need to understand, Nneka. You're not as pure and untouchable as you think. You came from a broken past, just like the rest of us. Stop pretending you're better than me. Nneka's grief quickly turned to anger. You're despicable, Adora. Whatever my father did or didn't do has nothing to do with me, and it doesn't change the fact that you're a manipulative, heartless person who thrives in other people's pain. Adora stood, unfazed by Nneka's outburst. Believe what you want, but now you know the truth, and if you don't want the rest of the village or Lagos to find out, you will stay far away from Chuka. He doesn't need someone with your baggage. With that, Adora turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Nneka sitting in stunned silence. That night, Nneka sat alone in her room, the envelope still on the table. She hadn't told her aunt about Adora's visit, not wanting to burden her with the revelation. She thought about her father, the man who had worked so hard to provide for her, the man who had taught her to value honesty and integrity. Had it all been a facade? Her thoughts turned to Chuka. She missed him. But could she face him now, knowing what she had learned? Adora's words echoed in her mind. You're not as pure and untouchable as you think. For the first time, Nneka wondered if she had been unfair to Chuka. He wasn't perfect, but neither was she. The next morning, as Adora helped her aunt in the shop, she heard the sound of another car pulling outside. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Chuka step out, looking tired but determined. Nneka, he said, walking towards her. She froze, her emotion a whirlwind of love, anger and confusion. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't stay away, Chuka said. I need to talk to you, please. Before she could respond, her aunt appeared, eyeing Chuka suspiciously. Who is this Nneka? A friend, Nneka said quickly. Auntie, I will handle this. Her aunt nodded reluctantly and went back inside, leaving Nneka and Chuka alone. Chuka tried to explain his side of the story, but Nneka was too overwhelmed to fully process his words. You don't understand, Chuka, she said finally. I'm dealing with things you can't even imagine right now. I don't have the strength for this. Then let me help you, Chuka said. Whatever it is, we can face it together. Nneka shook her head. You don't know what you're asking. My life, my family, it's all a mess. I don't care, Chuka said firmly. I love you, Nneka, and I'm not giving up on us. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Adora was already planning her next move. She had underestimated Chuka's resolve. But she wasn't done yet.